All right, we've got a really interesting one today.
Yeah.
It's an article called Public Schools Under Siege. Corporate Messaging Masquerades as Journalism.
Oh, wow.
And it's from the outside, written by Jaime Hoerricks.
Okay.
And it's about teacher shortages,
Mm.
Especially in special education.
Mm.
But it makes a pretty bold claim.
Oh, really?
It says that some publications might actually be making the problem worse.
That is a bold claim.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting. The article uses an example from Chalkbeat,
Okay.
an article called Special Education Staffing Shortages Put Students' Futures at Risk, How to Solve. That is tricky.
It's a mouthful.
It is. And it uses that to highlight what it sees as a bigger pattern.
Gotcha.
Basically, the article argues that while these pieces seem to be addressing the shortage,
Right.
they're actually presenting solvable problems as like impossibly complex.
Oh, so instead of offering like real solutions, they're just creating a sense of hopelessness.
Yeah.
And I can see how that would be so frustrating for teachers. They're already feeling overwhelmed.
Right. And the article points out that there are some very specific things missing from that Chalkbeat piece.
Like what?
Well, things that seem pretty important, like the financial and emotional burdens on special education teachers,
Oh, yeah.
the cost of, getting credentialed,
Right.
and just the cultural devaluation of the profession in general.
Yeah.
It's barely mentioned in there.
Wow.
It's almost like they're trying to make it seem like the problem is so big
Right.
and so complicated
Yeah.
that there's no point in even trying to fix it.
Which, of course, raises the question, why would anyone want to portray it as unsolvable? What's the motivation there?
Well, that's where the article's main argument comes in.
Ugh.
It claims that publications like Chalkbeat are really heavily influenced by their donors.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these donors have a vested interest in charter schools and voucher programs.
So the idea is that these donors are shaping the narrative to benefit them, instead of, addressing the systemic issues that are actually causing the teacher shortage.
Right, that's the basic idea.
Okay.
The article argues that by downplaying, the effectiveness of solutions like increasing teacher pay
Right.
or getting rid of credentialing costs completely, they're pushing a narrative that ultimately benefits the privatization of education.
Okay. That's starting to make sense, but then the article takes a kind of a weird turn.
Really?
It suggests that Chalkbeat might even be using AI-generated content.
Wow.
It even questions whether the author of the piece,
Okay.
Palin Belsha, is even a real person.
That's where things get a little
I don't know.
speculative.
Yeah.
The article points to Belsha's background. It seems kind of contradictory.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that her online presence is pretty sparse.
Interesting.
And they use that as evidence.
Okay.
It also notes that there are some quotes in the article from Heritage Foundation affiliates.
Oh, wow.
And that's a group that's known for promoting school choice. So they're saying that's further evidence of an agenda.
Yeah, I can see why you called it a bold claim.
Right.
It sounds a little bit like a conspiracy theory.
It does, a little bit.
But I guess it's not totally out there in this day and age.
It's true. AI is getting so sophisticated now.
Right.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
So the article goes as far as to call these types of articles spam,
Oh, wow.
arguing that this constant barrage of negativity aimed at public education, it's a deliberate tactic.
Although it's intentional.
Yeah, to wear down teachers and then make them more open to privatization efforts.
So it's not just about shaping the narrative for the public. It's about demoralizing the teachers themselves.
Yeah, that's the idea.
The article argues that this kind of messaging can really mess with teachers psychologically,
Yeah.
leading to burnout, apathy, and then ultimately a willingness to accept solutions that might not be in their best interest.
That's scary. That's pretty disturbing. But if that's the case, what can we even do about it?
Well, the article does offer some solutions.
Okay.
It calls for a complete overhaul of the education system,
Whoa.
including fully funding public education,
You're right.
increasing teacher pay, like significantly,
Mm-hmm.
making teacher certification more accessible,
Right.
and then finally addressing that cultural devaluation of educators that we talked about.
Wow. So it's like they're calling for like a total paradigm shift
It is. It's a lot.
in how we think about and fund education.
Yeah, it's a pretty tall order.
It is.
And the article even admits that,
Right.
implementing these changes would be a huge undertaking.
Yeah. But I guess they're saying that these are the kinds of changes that we need
Right.
to really address the teacher shortage
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that public education is healthy for the long term.
Absolutely.
Okay, so before we get into all of that, I want to go back to that Chalkbeat article for a second.
Sure.
Because The outside piece mentions some really interesting details about how that piece frames the issue.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit more, like how it kind of avoids even mentioning certain solutions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, almost like it's trying to steer the reader towards a specific conclusion.
Interesting.
It never talks about, increasing teacher salaries
Right.
or getting rid of the cost of credentialing programs.
Which, as we've been saying, those are two pretty common sense
Yeah,
solutions
exactly.
that could make a big impact on the teacher shortage.
Absolutely.
So why do you think those were left out?
Well, remember how the on-site article said that Chalkbeat gets a lot of its funding from organizations that really like charter schools and voucher programs?
Right.
Groups like the Walton Family Foundation, for example.
Hmm.
They've put a lot of money into the idea of school choice.
So are they saying that these groups are basically using their money to influence what Chalkbeat publishes?
That's what the on-site piece seems to be suggesting,
Hmm.
instead of advocating for things that would actually help public schools.
Like better funding and teacher pay.
Right.
They're pushing for things that benefit them.
Like diverting public funds to private institutions.
Wow, it's a pretty cynical view.
It is.
But I guess it makes sense when you think about it.
And especially when you consider that whole thing about Kale and Belsha.
Oh, yeah. Maybe being an AI-generated persona.
Right.
If that was actually true, that would be kind of a scary example of how technology can be used to manipulate public opinion.
It would be pretty shocking.
Yeah.
But I think we should be careful about jumping to conclusions.
Right.
AI is getting super advanced, but I haven't seen any real proof that Belsha isn't a real person.
Okay, fair enough. But even if she is a real person, the way the article is written is still a little suspicious.
What do you mean?
Well, like, they quote people who work for the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, right.
And that's a pretty conservative think tank.
Yeah, they're big on school choice and voucher programs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they're not saying they agree with them, but they're putting it out there as a solution to the teacher shortage.
You're right, that's a pretty big detail.
And that aligns with the interests of some of Chalkbeat's donors.
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to nudge the reader towards a specific conclusion.
Without actually saying it.
Yeah, that's a common tactic in persuasive writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's more effective to lead the reader to a conclusion than to, hit them over the head with it.
Right.
And the way the article is written and the sources they use definitely seems to be doing that.
So even if we forget about the whole AI thing, it sounds like their article is saying that Chalkbeat's coverage of the teacher shortage is biased because of who funds them.
That's basically what they're arguing.
Which is kind of a disturbing thought when you think about it.
It is, because it undermines the whole idea of journalism being a neutral and objective source of information.
Right. If we can't trust them to give us the facts, then what can we do?
And it all comes down to media literacy.
Media literacy.
Yeah, we need to be aware of the potential for bias in everything we read and watch and listen to.
So news articles, social media posts, even entertainment.
It's all media, and it can all be biased in some way.
So it's not just about being skeptical of everything you read. It's about being able to look deeper and figure out what's really going on.
Like a detective.
Yeah, like a detective.
Looking for clues.
Okay, I like that analogy. So how do we do that? Where do we even begin?
The article suggests that educators should really try to become more media literate.
More media literate.
Yeah, so basically learning how to read these articles and see through all the spin.
Okay.
It says we should try to think like detectives.
Detectives?
Yeah, like looking for clues.
Oh, I see.
To figure out, what the author's agenda might be.
Okay, so like what kind of clues? Where do we even start?
Well, one good place to start is by looking at who gives the publication money.
Well, funding sources.
Yeah, who are their donors?
Right.
What do those donors care about?
Mm-hmm.
And then how might that be showing up in what the publication writes about?
Okay, that makes sense.
The article also says to look at the sources that are quoted in the article.
Okay.
Are they representing different points of view, or are they all coming from the same side?
Right. If you're only hearing from people who all agree.
Exactly.
That's a problem.
It's like an echo chamber.
Yeah.
You're not getting the full picture.
Right.
So the article encourages educators to look for other sources of information.
Okay.
Publications and organizations that are run by educators themselves.
So we can hear directly from teachers.
Right, without it having to go through some corporate filter.
Okay, that's interesting.
And then finally, the article talks about the importance of collective action.
Collective action.
Yeah. Educators coming together to challenge these narratives and to really fight for change.
So like a movement?
Yeah, it's about educators uniting and using their voices together.
Okay.
Because when they do that, they can really push back against privatization efforts.
Right.
They can demand better funding for public schools,
Mm.
and they can advocate for policies that really support teachers and students.
It's like they're calling for a revolution, taking back the power of education.
Exactly, and giving it back to the people who actually care about it the most.
That's really powerful.
And, beyond all the policy stuff,
Right.
the article also says we need a cultural shift.
A cultural shift.
Yeah, like we need to change how we think about educators in our society.
Mm.
We need to stop thinking of teaching as this, low-skill, low-value job.
Right.
And start recognizing that teachers are essential workers.
Yeah, they are.
They play such a crucial role in shaping our future.
And that means we need to treat them better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Give them better pay, better resources, better professional development.
Yeah, create a work environment where they feel supported and appreciated.
Exactly, because they deserve it.
And, we also need to be more careful about what we believe when it comes to education.
It's so easy to just accept what we read or what we hear.
Especially when it seems like it's coming from a reliable source.
Right. But this whole conversation has really shown me how important it is to question everything.
Yeah, to really dig deeper and understand what's really going on.
And, this isn't just about education.
Right.
It's about understanding how narratives are used all the time.
Yeah, to shape how we see the world.
So we need to become more critical thinkers.
Be our own detectives.
Exactly, in all areas of our lives.
So to our listeners out there, the next time you read an article or watch the news or even scroll through social media, take a second to stop and think.
Yeah, ask yourself some questions.
Like, who's telling the story? Why are they telling it? What information might they be leaving out? And how does this narrative affect me and my community?
Those are great questions.
Because if we can all start asking those questions, we can become more informed, more engaged, and more empowered citizens.
Well said. And on that note, we want to thank you all for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a really interesting conversation.
We've unpacked some really complex ideas.
Explored the power of media narratives.
And hopefully given you some things to think about.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a fascinating topic.
Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and keep learning.
See you next time.